She was thrown to the wolves, but the one who found her was their king. The forest breathed cold against her skin. Every exhale became mist. Every inhale tasted of pine and iron. Ilara's bare feet left crimson prints in the snow, her wolf whimpering somewhere deep inside her chest. Too weak to shift, too broken to run. They had cast her out at dawn. Her own alpha, her own blood, had called her cursed. The mark on her shoulder, a crescent traced in silver scars, had been enough to condemn her. Different, dangerous, unworthy. She stumbled through the drifts, vision blurring. The forest was silent except for the wind and the distant crack of branches under weight. Then she heard it. A low, guttural growl, pain wrapped in fury. Ilara froze. 20 paces ahead, tangled in iron and wire, a massive wolf thrashed against the hunter's trap. His fur was midnight black, streaked with blood. His eyes, golden, ancient, burning, locked onto hers. He snarled, a warning, a plea. She should have run. Any wolf with sense would flee a male that size, that wounded, that wild. But Ilara had been born with a gift her pack called madness. She felt the pain of others as if it were her own. And this wolf's agony was a scream that split her ribs open. She moved forward. The wolf snapped at the air, jaws closing inches from her outstretched hand. She didn't flinch. Her fingers found the first wire, slick with his blood, and began to work it free. The metal cut into her palms. She whispered something her grandmother had taught her. Words in the old tongue, words that meant mercy, safety, breath. The wolf stilled. His golden eyes studied her face as she pulled the second wire loose, then the third. When the final trap snapped open, he could have torn her throat out. Instead, he collapsed into the snow, sides heaving, watching her with something that looked like disbelief. Ilara pressed her torn hands against his wounds. Heat flooded through her palms, not fire, but moonlight made solid. The crescent scar on her shoulder burned silver bright. The wolf's breathing steadied. His eyes never left hers. Then he shifted. The transformation was seamless, brutal, beautiful. Where the wolf had lain, now knelt a man. Tall, scarred, naked in the frost. His black hair fell across a face carved from stone and shadow. And those eyes, still golden, still burning. "You freed me," he said. His voice was gravel and thunder. "Why?" Ilara's legs gave out. She sank into the snow beside him, blood dripping from her hands. "Because you were dying." He reached for her wrists, examining the cuts with a reverence that made her chest tight. "You're Omega." "I was," her voice cracked. "They cast me out this morning." Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, rage, and beneath it all, something that looked like guilt. The silver mark. She nodded. He was silent for a long moment, studying the crescent scar on her shoulder as if it were a language he'd forgotten how to read. Then he spoke, and the words carried the weight of an oath older than the forest itself. "I am Kale, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and you, little healer, you just saved the life of a wolf who has spent 300 years learning how to die." He cupped her bleeding hands in his. "I swear on the moon that watches us, on the blood we've both spilled, no one will ever cast you out again." The forest held its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a howl rose, long, mournful, searching. Ilara looked into the eyes of the wolf who called himself king, and for the first time since dawn, she felt something other than cold. She felt chosen. Kale carried her through the forest like she weighed nothing. His body radiated heat despite the frost, despite the wounds still healing beneath his skin. Ilara's consciousness drifted, tethered only by the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her cheek. "Stay with me," he murmured, not a command, a request. She forced her eyes open. "Where are we going?" Somewhere they won't find you. The trees grew denser, older. The moonlight struggled to reach them here, filtering through branches twisted into shapes that looked almost deliberate. Then the forest opened onto a cliff face, and carved into the stone was a door. Ancient, concealed, protected by symbols that glowed faint silver when Kyle approached. He spoke a word she didn't recognize, and the door opened. Inside was a sanctuary that felt both abandoned and sacred. Furs covered the stone floor. A fire pit sat cold and waiting in the center. Along the walls, weapons hung beside tapestries depicting wolves beneath a bleeding moon. And everywhere, carved into stone, woven into fabric, etched into metal, was the same crescent symbol that marked Ilara's shoulder. "What is this place?" she whispered. Kale set her down gently on the furs. "A refuge for those marked by the Pathfinder's moon." He began building a fire, his movements practiced, efficient. "Your pack called you cursed. They were wrong. They said I was dangerous. You are." The fire caught, throwing shadows across his scarred face. "To those who deserve it." Ilara studied him in the firelight, even wounded, even gentle. He carried violence in his bones, the kind of violence that came from centuries of survival, of choosing who lived and who died. "You're not afraid of me. I've spent 300 years afraid of myself." He moved to kneel beside her, gathering supplies, cloth, water, herbs that smelled of mountain snow. Fear is exhausting. He began cleaning her hands with a tenderness that contradicted everything about him. Each touch was careful, reverent, as if she were something precious that might shatter. The silver mark on her shoulder pulsed warm, and she felt his pain again. Not physical, but deeper. A wound that had nothing to do with Hunter's traps. "Why were you alone in those woods?" she asked. His hands stilled. "I was hunting the men who set that trap. They've been killing my wolves for sport, leaving their bodies displayed like trophies." His jaw tightened. "I let anger make me careless. And now? Now they have bigger problems than me." He met her eyes, and something in that gaze promised retribution, measured in blood. "Because they hurt what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like the first warm thing she'd touched since her pack threw her into the snow. "I'm not yours," she said softly. "I'm not anyone's." "No." He wrapped her hands in clean cloth, his fingers lingering against her wrists. "You're your own. But that doesn't mean I won't destroy anyone who tries to take you." The fire crackled. Outside, wind howled through the mountain pass, carrying the distant sound of pursuit. Ilara's former pack, perhaps, or the hunters. It didn't matter. In this moment, wrapped in furs beside a wolf who called himself king, she felt something she'd never known in her own territory. She felt safe. Kale stood, moving to the entrance. His body was still bare, still magnificent in its scars and strength. He spoke without turning. "Sleep, Ilara. I'll keep watch. You're still healing. I've survived worse." He glanced back, and the firelight caught gold in his eyes. "Besides, you already healed the parts that mattered." She wanted to ask what he meant, but exhaustion pulled at her like a tide, and the warmth of the fire wrapped around her like a promise. As she drifted toward sleep, she heard him whisper something, words in the old tongue, words that sounded like prayer. And for the first time since the moon marked her, Ilara believed she might be exactly where she was meant to be. Dawn came silver through the cave entrance, and with it, the sound of wolves. Ilara woke to find Kale standing at the threshold, fully dressed in leather and steel, his body tense as a drawn bow. Beyond him, shapes moved through the morning mist, large, deliberate, circling. "Your pack?" she whispered, rising from the furs. "Part of it." His voice carried an edge she hadn't heard before. "And they're not happy." 3 wolves emerged from the mist. shifting as they crossed into the cave. 2 males, 1 female, all bearing scars that spoke of countless battles. The female's eyes were ice blue and sharp as blades. She looked at Alara with something between curiosity and contempt. "You've been missing for 2 days, my king." Her voice was silk over steel. "We feared the hunters had finally claimed you." "I was detained." Kyle didn't move from his protective stance in front of Alara. "And I found something they wanted more than my death." The female's gaze slid past him to fix on Alara, on the silver crescent glowing faint against her shoulder. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something darker. "A pathfinder. You brought a pathfinder into our sanctuary." "I brought a wolf who saved my life. Nyla. She's Omega, rejected, cursed by her own. She's marked by the moon herself." Kyle's words cut like winter wind, which makes her more valuable than every wolf in this territory combined. Silence stretched taut as wire. One of the males, broad-shouldered, with a scar bisecting his face, stepped forward. "The girl's former pack is hunting her. They claim she stole something. That she's dangerous. She is dangerous." Kale moved aside, finally letting them see Alara fully. To anyone who underestimates what mercy looks like when it decides to fight back. Alara forced herself to stand, though her legs still trembled. She met Nyla's ice-blue stare without flinching. "I didn't steal anything. They cast me out because they were afraid of what I am." "And what are you?" Nyla asked. The words came before Alara could stop them. "I'm the wolf who's going to help you find the ones who've been killing your pack." The cave went still. Even Kale turned to look at her, surprise flickering across his ancient face. Nyla's expression shifted from contempt to something more dangerous. Interest. "How?" Alara touched the silver mark on her shoulder. "I feel pain. Everyone's pain. When something dies violently nearby, I know. I know where, I know how, I know who." She took a breath. "And yesterday, I felt 3 of your wolves die, east of here, near the frozen river. They were ambushed by men with silver nets and fire." The scarred male moved so fast Alara barely saw it. His hand was at her throat, lifting her off the ground. "You lie. There's no way you could—" "Enough, Riker!" Kale's voice dropped to a growl that made the cave walls vibrate. "Put her down!" Riker hesitated, then released her. Alara gasped, stumbling back into Kale's steadying hands. "She's telling the truth," Kale said quietly. "I've seen what she can do. The Pathfinder's gift isn't legend, it's real, and she's offering to help us." Nyla studied Alara for a long moment. Then she knelt, a gesture of respect that clearly cost her pride. "If what you say is true, Pathfinder, then our king was right to protect you. But know this, mercy only works in one direction here. Betray us, and even Kale won't be able to save you." "I don't want to betray anyone," Alara said. "I just want to stop people from dying." Something shifted in the cave's atmosphere, a decision made without words. Riker nodded slowly. The other male, who hadn't spoken, placed a fist over his heart in salute. Kale's hands tightened on Alara's shoulders. "Then it's settled. Alara is under my protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me." He paused. "And anyone who doubts her will see exactly what a Pathfinder can do when the moon rises tonight." As his wolves departed, Nyla lingered at the entrance. She looked back at Alara with eyes that had seen too many winters, too many losses. "I hope you're worth the war your presence is going to start, little Omega." When they were alone again, Kyle turned Alara to face him. His expression was unreadable. "You didn't have to do that. Offer to help them." "Yes, I did." She met his golden eyes. "Because they're your family, and you saved mine." For a moment, something cracked in that ancient, guarded face. Then he pulled her close, not romantic, but protective, desperate. His forehead pressed against hers, and she felt his breath shake. "Don't make me regret keeping you alive," he whispered. "Don't make me regret freeing you," she whispered back. "And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you." The frozen river was a grave. Elara felt them before she saw them. 3 wolves, their spirits still screaming in the place where they'd fallen. The pain hit her like a blade between ribs, doubling her over in the snow. Kyle caught her before she collapsed. "Breathe," he commanded. "Don't let it consume you." But the agony was everywhere. In the scorched earth, in the blood frozen into crimson ice, in the silver nets still tangled around bones. She pressed her scarred hands into the ground, and the crescent moon on her shoulder blazed white-hot. Then she saw, not with her eyes, but with something deeper. The memory of violence played out before her like a ritual she was forced to witness. 3 wolves, young and strong, ambushed at moonrise. Men in dark leather, faces covered, wielding weapons blessed by something that stank of corrupted magic. They hadn't just killed, they'd tortured, experimented, carved symbols into living flesh while the wolves screamed. Ilara's own scream tore through the forest. Kale's arms wrapped around her, pulling her back from the vision. "I've got you, I've got you." But she couldn't stop seeing. The faces of the killers were burned into her mind now. 5 men, 1 woman, and their leader, a man with a brand on his neck that matched the symbol carved into the dead wolves' bodies. "They're not just hunters," she gasped. "They're collectors." Nyla, Riker, and the others had followed them to the river. Now they stood frozen, watching Ilara with a mixture of horror and awe. The scarred Omega who'd freed their king was trembling in the snow, silver light bleeding from her eyes. "What do you mean, collectors?" Riker demanded. Ilara forced herself to speak through chattering teeth. "They're trying to steal wolf essence, our connection to the moon. They believe if they kill us during transformation, while we're between forms, they can harvest our power." She looked at Kyle. "They've been doing this for years, across multiple territories." "That's impossible," Nyla said. "We would have known." "You knew wolves were dying. You just didn't know why." Ilara pushed herself to her feet, Kyle's hands steadying her. "They're careful. They only take a few from each pack, never enough to start a war, always enough to experiment." Kyle's expression had gone cold as winter stone. "How many have they killed?" The number came to her like a funeral bell. 43, that I can feel. There might be more." Silence fell over the group. Even Riker, who'd threatened her yesterday, looked shaken. 43 wolves. 43 murders that had gone unanswered because no one understood what they were hunting. "Can you track them?" Kyle asked quietly. Ilara closed her eyes, reaching for the thread of pain that connected her to the killer's location. It pulled south, toward the mountains where the forest grew dark and twisted. "They're moving, hunting again tonight." "Then we stop them." Kyle's voice carried the weight of command and centuries of fury. "Before they kill anyone else." But Nyla stepped forward, her ice-blue eyes fixed on Ilara. "She's too weak. Look at her. She can barely stand after reading 1 death sight. If we take her into battle, she'll be a liability." "She's the only one who can find them," Kyle countered. "Then she finds them and stays behind while we fight." "No." Ilara's voice cut through the argument. Both wolves turned to stare at her. She straightened, ignoring the tremor in her limbs. "I'm going with you. Because when you face them, you'll need to know which one to kill first." "Which one?" Riker asked. "The leader, the one with the brand." Ilara met his eyes. "Because he's the only one who knows the ritual. Kill him, and the others are just murderers with weapons. Keep him alive, and every wolf in the north is at risk." Kale studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to his wolves. "We move at dusk. Riker, gather the hunting party. Nyla, prepare the weapons. Silver blessed steel. nothing they can corrupt, and someone find Ilara proper armor. You're serious about bringing her? Nyla asked. I'm serious about ending this. Kale looked at Ilara, and something passed between them. Trust, recognition. The beginning of something that felt like fate. She freed me from a trap. Now I'm going to free her from the ones who made her afraid to be powerful. As the others dispersed to prepare, Kale pulled Ilara aside. The river stretched behind them, frozen and silent. He cupped her face in his scarred hands. What you did just now, opening yourself to their deaths, that took more courage than any battle I've fought. I was terrified, she admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding the fear doesn't get to win. His thumb brushed across her cheek. Promise me something. What? When we find these killers and the fighting starts, if you feel yourself breaking, if the pain becomes too much, you run. You get out. You save yourself. Ilara thought about her old pack, who'd cast her out for being different. About the wolves who'd died alone and afraid. About the gift she'd spent her whole life trying to hide. I won't run, she said. Not anymore. Kyle's expression shifted into something that looked like pride mixed with dread. Then I'll make sure you never have to. And as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the snow in shades of blood and gold, Ilara felt the silver mark on her shoulder pulse warm. The moon was waking, and so was she. They moved through the forest like ghosts, 12 wolves silent as falling snow. Ilara ran at the center of their formation, her new armor fitting strange but solid against her skin. Kale stayed at her side, never more than a breath away. The pain thread pulled her south, growing stronger with each mile. She could feel them now, the killers, preparing their trap, setting silver nets, drawing symbols in blood, waiting for wolves to stumble into their ritual circle. How close? Kyle whispered. A mile, maybe less. Ilara's voice shook. They're expecting victims, not hunters. Nyla appeared on her other side, moving like water through the undergrowth. You're certain about the leader? That he's the key? I've seen what happens when he speaks the words. The others just hold the wolves down. He's the one who makes the magic work. Then he dies first. No. Ilara grabbed Nyla's arm. He dies last. Because if you kill him before the ritual starts, the others might run, scatter, start again, somewhere else. She met the ice-blue stare. You have to let him think he's winning. Nyla's expression was unreadable. Then she nodded. You're more ruthless than you look, Pathfinder. I'm tired of wolves dying. They crested a ridge and saw it below. A clearing lit by torches. The snow stained black with old blood. 6 figures moved with practiced efficiency, setting traps, murmuring incantations. And in the center, the man with the branded neck knelt before an altar made of wolf bones. Rage flooded through the pack. Ilara felt it like a living thing, hot and violent. Riker's growl was subvocal thunder. Another wolf began to shift involuntarily, fur rippling across skin. Kyle raised one hand. The command was silent but absolute. They held. Wait for my signal, he breathed. The killers finished their preparation. The branded man stood, spreading his arms wide. Come forth, children of the corrupted moon. Come offer your essence to those who can wield it properly. Ilara's stomach turned. He truly believed this. Believed wolves were abominations to be harvested and corrected. Then she heard it. Paws in the snow. Young wolves, drawn by curiosity or hunger, approaching the clearing. 3 of them, barely more than adolescents, about to walk straight into the trap. Kyle, she hissed, I see them. The young wolves entered the clearing. The hunters moved with practiced speed, throwing nets, shouting words that made the silver burn and smoke. The wolves yelped, trapped, terrified. The branded man approached with a blade that glowed with sick green light. "Perfect specimens. The moon has blessed us tonight." Kale's howl split the night. 12 wolves erupted from the forest. The hunters barely had time to scream. Riker took down the first with savage efficiency. Nyla moved like liquid death, her blade finding throats with surgical precision. The other wolves spread out, cutting off escape routes, showing the hunters what it felt like to be prey. But Alara's focus stayed on the branded man. He dropped his blade and was running toward the altar, hands moving in complex gestures, mouth forming words that tasted of rot and iron. He was trying to complete the ritual anyway, using the chaos as fuel. "Kale!" Ilara ran forward, silver mark blazing. "He's still casting!" The branded man's eyes locked onto her. Recognition flickered across his face. "The Pathfinder. I've been searching for one of you. Your essence would be—" He never finished. Kyle crashed into him with the force of an avalanche. They rolled across blood-stained snow, wolf and hunter, both fighting with centuries of skill and fury. Alara reached the young wolves, pulling nets free with strength she didn't know she possessed. "Run! Go! Now!" They fled into the forest. Around her, the battle was ending. The hunters were skilled, but they weren't prepared for wolves who understood their tactics. Who'd been trained by a king who'd survived 300 years of violence. Kyle had the branded man pinned, one hand around his throat. "How many have you killed?" The man laughed, blood bubbling between his teeth. "Enough to learn, enough to understand." His eyes found Alara. "She knows. The Pathfinder knows. We're trying to save you. Save you from the curse that makes you—" "Mercy was never your intention," Alara said quietly. She knelt beside him, placing her scarred hand on his chest. "I can feel what you've done. Every death, every scream. You didn't want to save anyone. You wanted to steal what you could never earn." The man's expression twisted. "You're all abominations. We're doing the moon's work. The moon doesn't need your help." Kale's grip tightened. "And neither do we." He looked at Alara. A question in those golden eyes. Permission. She thought about the 43 wolves who'd died in terror, about the young ones who'd almost joined them tonight, about every Omega who'd been called cursed for being different. "End it," she whispered. Kyle did. The silence afterward was absolute. The remaining hunters were bound and unconscious. The young wolves were gone, safe, and Alara stood in a clearing stained with justice, her silver mark still glowing bright. Nyla approached, blood on her armor, respect in her eyes. "You were right about everything. The leader, the ritual, the timing." She paused. "I judged you wrong, Pathfinder." "You were protecting your family," Ilara said. "I understand." Kyle stood, weary and magnificent, his eyes never leaving Alara's face. "The rest of them will be turned over to the council. They'll face judgment from every territory they've hunted in." "And us?" Alara asked. He moved to her, cupping her face with blood-stained hands. "We go home, and you never doubt your worth again." As they walked back through the forest, surrounded by wolves who now looked at her with something like reverence, Ilara felt the weight of her old pack's rejection finally lifting. She wasn't cursed. She was exactly what the moon intended. And for the first time in her life, that felt like enough. The sanctuary cave felt different when they returned. Warmer, sacred in a way that had nothing to do with ancient symbols. Kyle built the fire while the others dispersed to tend wounds and rest. When they were alone, he turned to Alara with an expression she couldn't read. "You were extraordinary tonight. I was terrified. That's what made it extraordinary." He crossed to her, moving with the careful deliberation of a predator trying not to spook prey. "Most wolves spend their whole lives running from fear. You walked straight into it." Alara looked down at her hands, still stained with blood, still trembling. I kept thinking about those young wolves, how close they came to. But they didn't, because of you. Kyle caught her hands, holding them steady. Do you understand what that means? How rare it is to find someone who chooses mercy before vengeance. You chose mercy. You could have killed those hunters on sight. I wanted to. His voice dropped to something raw. Every instinct I have screamed for blood. But I looked at you, and I remembered there's supposed to be more to strength than violence. The fire crackled. Outside, wolves settled in for the night, their howls echoing across mountains, and in this small cave carved into ancient stone, Ilara felt something shift between them. What happened to you? She asked softly. 300 years is a long time to survive. What made you so tired of living? Kyle was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he released her hands and moved to the fire, staring into flames that reflected gold in his eyes. I had a mate once, before I was king, before I understood what immortality costs. His voice was careful, measured. She was human, brave, stubborn, brilliant. And I loved her the way young wolves love, absolutely without question. Ilara's chest tightened. She aged, I didn't. 50 years together, watching her grow old while I stayed frozen in time. He paused. When she died, I tried to follow, but the moon wouldn't let me. Said I had a purpose to fulfill, a destiny to honor. So I've spent 3 centuries protecting wolves who grow old and die while I watch, loving nothing, feeling nothing, becoming nothing but duty and distance. Until yesterday, Ilara said. He looked at her. Until you freed me from that trap, and I felt something other than numbness for the first time in 200 years. What did you feel? Hope. The word came out broken, and it terrified me. Because hope means vulnerability. It means caring enough to be destroyed again. Ilara crossed to him, standing close enough to feel his heat. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking for forever. I know what I am, a rejected Omega with a gift that makes people uncomfortable. You're a pathfinder marked by the moon herself. You're the rarest wolf born in 1,000 years. His hand rose to trace the silver crescent on her shoulder. And you saved my life before you even knew who I was. That kind of mercy doesn't come from weakness. It comes from the kind of strength most wolves never find. Then why do you look at me like I'm going to disappear? Because everyone does, eventually. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. But for once, I want to believe I'm allowed to hold something good. The words hung between them like a prayer. Ilara reached up, covering his hand with hers. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered, unless you send me away. Never. The word was a vow. I told you before, no one will ever cast you out again. I meant it. Even when I'm difficult, when the visions get too strong, when I break from feeling everyone's pain, especially then. He pulled her close, and she felt his heartbeat against her cheek. Because I've spent 300 years breaking alone. At least this way, we can be broken together. It wasn't a declaration of love. It was something more honest, an acknowledgement of damage and the choice to carry it together. Ilara wrapped her arms around him and felt him shake with something that might have been relief or grief or both. The moon marked you for a reason, he murmured into her hair. And maybe she marked me too, to protect what she created. Or maybe we marked each other, Ilara said, by choosing mercy when we could have chosen vengeance. Kale pulled back to look at her, and in those ancient golden eyes, she saw something that looked like dawn breaking. Stay with me, not because I'm a king, not because of destiny or fate or the moon's will, but because you want to. I freed you from a trap, Ilara said. Why would I leave now? His smile was small, broken, beautiful. Then I promise you this. Whatever comes, hunters, packs, wars, centuries, I will protect you. Not because you need it, but because you deserve someone who finally sees you as more than a curse. Like if you believe rejection can become destiny. 3 days after the battle, Alara's former pack arrived at the borders of Kale's territory. She felt them before the scouts reported. Familiar presences, twisted with shame and desperation. Her old alpha, her birth family, the wolves who'd cast her into the snow and left her to die. They're requesting an audience, Nyla said, her voice carefully neutral, claiming diplomatic necessity. Kyle's expression went cold as winter stone. They cast out one of their own and now want diplomacy? They say they need the Pathfinder. Nyla looked at Alara. Something's happened to their territory. Wolves are dying, and they can't find the cause. Alara's hands clenched into fists. Let them die. The words surprised even her, but the bitterness was real, sharp as broken glass. These were the wolves who'd called her cursed, who'd stripped her of her name and left her bleeding in the forest. I understand the impulse, Kyle said quietly, but you need to decide. This is your choice, not mine. What choice? They threw me away. And now they need you, which means you have power. He moved to stand beside her, solid and steady. You can refuse. Send them away. Let their pack face whatever's killing them alone. No one would blame you. But you're a healer. It's not a choice you made. It's who you are. His hand found hers. And living with regret is worse than dying with dignity. Believe me, I've tried both. Alara closed her eyes, reaching for the thread that connected her to her old territory. The pain was immediate, overwhelming. Wolves dying slowly, mysteriously. Something in the water, or the ground, or the air. Poison that tasted like corrupted moonlight. It's the same magic, she whispered. From the hunters. They poisoned the land before they died. Kale's growl was subterranean, a final act of vengeance. It'll spread, to other territories, to other packs. Alara opened her eyes. If I don't stop it, hundreds will die. Then we go. Kyle turned to Nyla. Assemble a protective detail. If her old pack tries anything. They won't, Alara interrupted, because they know I'm their only chance, and that kills them more than the poison ever could. The journey took 2 days. Ilara's former territory was smaller than she remembered, the trees less imposing. Or maybe she'd just grown, changed, become something that couldn't be contained by wolves who saw difference as threat. Her old alpha waited at the border. He was thinner than she remembered, grayer, desperate. When he saw her approach, flanked by Kyle and his wolves, wearing armor that marked her as protected, something crumbled in his expression. Alara. Her name sounded foreign in his mouth. Thank you for coming. I didn't come for you. Her voice was ice. I came because wolves are dying. He flinched. Good. Show me the affected areas, she commanded. It was strange, giving orders to the alpha who'd once held her life in his hands. But he obeyed, leading them through territory that felt haunted. The poison was everywhere, seeping from the ground in oily patches, corrupting water sources, making prey animals sick and strange. Alara knelt, pressing her hands into contaminated earth. The silver mark on her shoulder blazed, and she saw. The hunters hadn't just been killing wolves. They'd been preparing for failure, cursing the land so that even in death, they'd continue their mission. It's in the groundwater, she said, spreading through roots and streams. Give it another month, and every territory connected to this watershed will be poisoned. Can you stop it? Her former alpha asked. Alara looked at him, really looked, saw the fear, the shame, the desperate hope that she'd saved them despite everything. I can, but it'll cost me. Anything. Name your price. I want you to know exactly what you threw away when you cast me out. She stood, facing him with eyes that glowed silver. I want you to understand that the curse you feared was the only thing that could save you, and I want you to live with that knowledge for the rest of your life. Silence fell over the gathered wolves. Her former packmates stared at her with expressions ranging from shame to awe to resentment. Kyle moved to her side. What do you need? A full moon, and everyone far enough away that my scream won't shatter them. Understanding crossed his face. How bad will it be? Bad enough that you'll want to stop me? Don't. She met his golden eyes. Promise me you won't stop me, no matter what you feel. He hesitated, then nodded. I promise. That night, under the full moon, Alara walked into the heart of the poisoned land, alone. Barefoot in toxic earth, her silver mark burning like a brand. The wolves watched from the tree line. Kale's pack, her former pack, all of them held back by the Alpha King's command. She knelt, pressed both hands into the corrupted ground, and opened herself completely. The poison flooded her. Every death, every scream, every corrupted intention the hunters had poured into this land. It filled her veins like acid, her bones like fire. She felt herself breaking, dissolving, becoming nothing but pain and fury. And then she screamed. Silver light exploded from her body, spreading like roots through the poisoned earth. Where it touched, corruption burned away. Water cleared, soil healed. The land itself shuddered and gasped and remembered what it meant to be clean. Ilara's voice went raw. Blood ran from her nose, her ears. The crescent mark on her shoulder split open, silver light bleeding through torn skin. She felt Kale's anguish through their bond, felt him fighting his promise not to stop her. But she couldn't stop. Not until every trace of poison was gone. The healing spread for miles, through watersheds and root systems, through everything the hunters had touched. And Ilara absorbed it all, transforming corruption into moonlight, death into life. When it was done, she collapsed. Kale caught her before she hit the ground, his voice breaking. Ilara, Ilara, stay with me. She tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth. Her vision was fading, silver and black. Through the haze, she saw her former alpha staring at her with horror and understanding. This is what I am, she managed to whisper. This is what you called cursed. Then darkness took her. Ilara woke 3 days later in Kale's sanctuary, wrapped in furs that smelled of safety and smoke. Her body felt different, lighter, hollow. The silver mark on her shoulder was scarred now, the crescent deeper and more defined. When she tried to move, agony lanced through every nerve. Don't! Kyle's voice, rough with exhaustion. He appeared beside her, looking like he hadn't slept since she collapsed. You need to heal. The land? Clean. Every trace of poison gone. He helped her drink water, his hands shaking. You did it. You saved them. My pack. Your former pack left offerings at the border. Food, furs, weapons. His expression hardened, and a formal apology declaring you were wrongfully exiled, for what that's worth. Nothing. Ilara closed her eyes. It's worth nothing. I know. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Ilara asked the question she'd been afraid to voice. Did I almost die? Yes. Did you want to stop me? Every second. His hand found hers, grip desperate. Watching you destroy yourself to save wolves who threw you away was the worst thing I've experienced in 300 years. But you kept your promise. Barely. He pressed his forehead to hers. Don't ask me to do that again. I can't watch you break and not try to put you back together. The land needed. I don't care about the land. I care about you. His voice cracked. You're not just a pathfinder. You're not just a healer. You're Ilara. And I need you to survive more than I need the world to be saved. The words hit her like a physical force. In all her life, no one had ever said anything like that. No one had ever chosen her over the greater good. That's selfish, she whispered. I've lived 300 years trying not to be selfish. It's exhausting." He pulled back to look at her, golden eyes fierce. "Let me be selfish. Let me want you alive more than I want you noble. Let me love you wrong instead of losing you right." The word hung between them. Love, raw and desperate, and nothing like the poetry she'd imagined. "You love me?" she asked, terribly, selfishly, in ways that would horrify anyone with sense. His laugh was broken. "You freed me from a trap and then walked into 50 worse ones without hesitation. How could I not?" Alara touched his face, feeling the scratch of stubble, the warmth of skin. "I'm damaged. The healings take pieces of me every time. Eventually, there won't be enough left to—" "Then we'll love the pieces that remain." He caught her hand, pressing it to his chest. "I've been empty for centuries. Whatever you have left is more than enough. You deserve someone whole. I deserve what I choose, and I choose you. Broken, scarred, impossible you." His smile was sad and fierce. "Besides, you think I'm whole. I'm held together by duty and stubbornness. At least your damage comes from saving others. Mine just comes from surviving too long." Tears burned behind Alara's eyes. This isn't how love stories are supposed to go. No, love stories are supposed to be clean and simple. First sight, easy devotion, happily ever after. He wiped her tears with careful thumbs. We're a different story. Trap and rescue, poison and healing. Two wolves too broken to fit anywhere else, choosing each other anyway. That sounds exhausting. It probably will be. He leaned down, pressing his lips to her forehead. But I've been alone for 300 years. Exhausting sounds perfect. Alara laughed, despite the pain, despite everything. You're ridiculous. And you're mine, if you want to be. She thought about her old pack, who'd cast her out for being different. About the wolves who'd died because of what she could do. About all the times she'd wished she were normal, powerless, invisible. But Kale didn't want normal. He wanted her. Specifically, impossibly her. "I want to be," she whispered, "even though I'm terrified." "Good. Fear means you're still alive." He settled beside her in the furs, pulling her close. "And I promise you this, whatever fears come, whatever pain, whatever impossible thing you have to face, you won't face it alone, not anymore. Even when I'm insufferable, especially then, even when the visions break me, I'll help you remember how to be whole. Even when I choose to heal instead of save myself." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I'll try, but I won't promise not to be furious about it." Alara smiled against his chest. "That's fair." They lay in silence, listening to the fire crackle and the wind howl outside. Two wolves who'd both spent too long alone, finally finding something like peace in each other's damage. "Tell me something," Alara said. "When you were in that trap, before I found you, what were you thinking?" "That I was finally going to die. That maybe this time the moon would let me rest. And now? Now I think maybe the moon knew what she was doing, putting us both in places where we'd have to choose, survive or surrender. Help or hide." His arms tightened. She knew we'd choose each other. "That's a lot of faith in destiny." "It's not faith in destiny. It's faith in you." He kissed the top of her head. "You freed a wolf from a trap, and that wolf promised to protect you forever. That's not destiny. That's choice." And as sleep pulled her back under, Alara thought that maybe choice was better than destiny anyway, because destiny was written in stars and prophecy. But choice was written in scars and promises and the decision to love someone anyway, even when it was terrifying, especially when it was terrifying. Spring came to the Northern Territories with surprising gentleness. Snow melted into rivers that ran clean and silver. Trees that had stood skeletal through winter exploded into green. And in the sanctuary cave, Ilara woke each morning wrapped in furs and Kale's arms, feeling something she'd never expected. Home. The past 3 months had been difficult. Her body healed slowly from the purification ritual, leaving her weaker than before. The visions still came, less frequently, but more intense. And there were days when the weight of feeling everyone's pain made her want to crawl into darkness and never emerge. But Kyle kept his promise. On the bad days, he sat with her in silence, holding her while she broke. On the good days, he taught her to fight, to lead, to understand that mercy didn't mean martyrdom. And slowly, carefully, Ilara learned what it meant to be loved, not despite her damage, but including it. "You're staring," she said one morning, catching his golden eyes watching her. "I'm memorizing." "Why?" "Because I spent 300 years forgetting what it felt like to want morning to come. Now I'm afraid I'll wake up, and this will have been the dream." Ilara rolled to face him fully. "Touch me. Tell me if I feel like a dream." He did, running scarred hands across her skin with a reverence that still made her breath catch. "You feel real. Too real. The kind of real that hurts to hold." "Then hold me anyway." So he did. Later, they walked through the territory together. Kyle's wolves had grown used to seeing them, the ancient king and his impossible pathfinder, moving through the forest like two halves of a strange prophecy. Nyla no longer looked at Ilara with suspicion. Riker had started bringing her tea after difficult visions. Even the younger wolves sought her out, asking quiet questions about pain and purpose. "They love you," Kale said, watching her interact with a young Omega who'd been struggling with her own gift. "They love what I can do. No, they love who you are. There's a difference." He pulled her close as they reached the cliff overlooking the valley. "You taught them that different doesn't mean dangerous, that being broken doesn't make you less." Ilara leaned into him, looking out over land that had once tried to kill her and now felt like sanctuary. "Do you ever regret it? Taking me in?" "Every day." She tensed. He felt it and laughed softly. "I regret that I didn't find you sooner, that you spent years thinking you were cursed when you were actually extraordinary. That's what I regret." His arms tightened. "Taking you in, protecting you, falling in love with you, those are the only things I've done right in 300 years. You're dramatic. I'm a 300-year-old wolf in love with a pathfinder. Dramatic is the baseline." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun move across the sky. Then Ilara felt it, a familiar presence approaching the border. Multiple presences, her former pack. "They're back," she said quietly. Kyle went still. "Do you want to see them?" "I don't know." "Then we'll decide together." Her former alpha arrived with a small delegation, all of them looking uncertain and ashamed. When they saw Ilara, standing tall beside the Alpha King, wearing armor that marked her as protected, no longer the broken Omega they'd discarded, something shifted in their expressions. "Ilara." Her former alpha bowed his head, a gesture of submission she'd never seen from him. "We came to thank you for saving our land. You already sent offerings. Offerings aren't enough." He stepped forward, and she noticed how old he looked now, how tired. "What we did, casting you out, was the worst decision I've ever made. We were afraid of what we didn't understand, and that fear cost us the most valuable wolf we had. You didn't just cast me out. You left me to die. I know. You called me cursed, dangerous, wrong. I know. And now you want forgiveness because I'm useful?" He flinched. "No, I want you to know that you were right, about everything. You were never cursed. We were, cursed with fear and ignorance and pride." He met her eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to hear this. You were always enough. We just weren't wise enough to see it." The words sat heavy between them. Ilara felt Kale's presence at her back, solid and steady. felt the weight of everything she'd survived: the exile, the pain, the impossible choice to save wolves who'd thrown her away. "I don't forgive you," she said quietly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand. But I also don't hate you anymore, because hating you means I'm still letting you define me." She straightened. "I'm not the Omega you cast out. I'm the Pathfinder who chose mercy over vengeance. The wolf who saved your land, not because you deserved it, but because others did. And I'm the mate of an Alpha King who saw my worth when no one else could." Her former Alpha's expression crumbled. "I'm sorry. For all of it." "I know." Ilara took a breath. "Now leave, and don't come back unless you're ready to see me as more than what I can do for you." They left without argument, and as they disappeared into the forest, Ilara felt something release in her chest. Not forgiveness, but freedom. The freedom to stop caring what they thought. Kyle turned her to face him. "How do you feel?" "Lighter. Good." He smiled. "Because I need you strong for what comes next." "What comes next?" "Living. Really living. Not just surviving or healing or saving everyone else." He cupped her face. "I want to show you what it means to be chosen, every day, in ways that have nothing to do with destiny or duty or gifts." "That sounds exhausting." "It probably will be." His smile turned soft. "But I've been alone for 300 years. Exhausting sounds perfect." Ilara laughed, pulling him close. "Say it again." "What?" "That exhausting sounds perfect." Kyle smiled against her hair. "I've been alone for 300 years. Exhausting sounds perfect." Ilara laughed, then grew serious. "I'm still going to have bad days, days where the visions are too much, where I break. That I've been alone for 300 years. Exhausting sounds perfect." Ilara laughed, then grew serious. "I'm still going to have bad days, days where the visions are too much, where I break. I know. And I'm still going to choose to heal people, even when it costs me." "I know that too." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But now you'll have someone who reminds you that your life matters as much as theirs. Someone who won't let you forget you're worth saving." "Even when I'm insufferable about it?" "Especially then." She stood on her toes, pressing her forehead to his. "Then say the other thing." "What other thing?" "The thing you said when I was dying. The thing you thought I couldn't hear." Kale went still. Then quietly. "I love you. Selfishly. Desperately, in ways that would horrify anyone sensible. I love your mercy and your stubbornness and your refusal to stay safe when others are suffering. I love that you freed a dying wolf without knowing he was a king. And I love that 300 years of emptiness ended the moment you touched my wounds and decided I was worth saving." Tears burned in Ilara's eyes. "That's better than poetry." "That's because it's true." She kissed him then, soft and fierce and full of promise. Around them, the forest breathed with new life. Above them, the moon watched with patient silver eyes. And between them, something ancient and impossible settled into place. Not destiny, not fate, just choice. The choice to love, the choice to stay, the choice to believe that mercy could crown even the broken. When they finally pulled apart, Kale rested his forehead against hers. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." He led her deeper into the territory, past the sanctuary cave, past the frozen river where she'd first read death, to a place she'd never been, a clearing where moonflowers grew wild despite the season. In the center stood an ancient stone carved with symbols that matched the crescent on her shoulder. "What is this place?" she whispered. "The Pathfinder's altar, where wolves marked by the moon come to make their vows." He turned to face her fully. 300 years ago, I swore at this stone that I would protect the Northern Territories until I died. That duty was my only purpose, my only reason to keep breathing. And now, Now I want to make a different vow." He took her hands. "Not to the moon, not to duty, to you." Alara's breath caught. "I, Kale, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, vow to protect you, not because you need it, but because you deserve it. I vow to hold you when you break and remind you why you're whole. I vow to choose you over duty, over destiny, over every sensible thing I should do." His golden eyes blazed. "And I vow that when you walk into danger to save others, I'll walk beside you, not to stop you, but to make sure you come back." The moonflowers glowed silver in the fading light. The altar hummed with ancient power, and Alara felt the weight of his words settle into her bones like sacred truth. "My turn?" she asked. "If you want." She squeezed his hands, finding her voice. "I, Alara, Pathfinder and former Omega, vow to let you love me, even on days I don't feel worthy, even when I'm difficult and stubborn and determined to save everyone but myself." She smiled through tears. "I vow to remember that mercy includes me too, that healing myself matters as much as healing others. And I vow that when you've lived too long and the weight gets too heavy, I'll remind you why living is worth it." Kale's expression cracked open. "You already do." "Then I vow to keep doing it, for as long as we both survive this impossible life." He pulled her close, and she felt him shake. Not with fear or grief, but with something that felt like relief, like a 300-year burden finally lifting. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "For what?" "For freeing me, not just from the trap, from everything." He pulled back to look at her. "From loneliness, from emptiness, from the belief that I had to carry everything alone. You freed me too," she said, "from thinking I was cursed, from believing different meant dangerous, from the idea that I had to earn love by being useful." They stood in the sacred clearing, two wolves who'd both been broken by different kinds of traps, choosing each other in defiance of every sensible thing. Above them, the moon rose full and bright. The moonflowers opened their petals, releasing perfume that smelled like destiny and choice and new beginnings. And somewhere in the forest, wolves howled, not in mourning, but in celebration, because their king had finally found something worth protecting more than duty, and their pathfinder had finally found somewhere worth calling home. Kale lifted Alara into his arms, spinning her once beneath the moon. When he set her down, his smile was the freest thing she'd ever seen. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "With you? Always." They walked back through moonlit forest, hands intertwined, futures uncertain but no longer alone. And if the path ahead held more pain, more impossible choices, more moments where mercy cost everything, at least they'd face it together. Two wolves, one trap, one choice that changed everything. She freed a wolf from hunter's traps, and the Alpha King promised to protect her forever, not because fate demanded it, but because love, real love, was always a choice. And they chose each other. If your heart beat alongside ours, like comment and subscribe. Because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.